Good evening, friends, and welcome to this edition of the Hamilton Report. I'm Scott J. Hamilton, the Executive Director of the Oklahoma Democratic Party, and I'm really happy that you're with us tonight, and believe me, I'm happy to be here with you. If you tuned in last week, you know that we had to abruptly cancel our broadcast. We do these live for a reason. We want to make sure you get the most up-to-date information available, but with the ice storm and it knocking our power out, and I'm sure many of you as well, we had no choice. So I'm really happy to be here with you tonight. I'd much rather be with you than trying to find flashlights at the dollar store, which is where I was about this time last Monday night. Before we get started, I want to just say this. Democracy, our democracy, is on the ballot tomorrow. If you've already voted, thank you for your vote. If you've stood in line to vote early, or if you have mailed in your absentee ballot, thank you for your vote. If you are still holding on to your absentee ballot, go tomorrow to your regular polling place, not the election board. Go to your regular polling place, and there you will just simply sign an affidavit that says you didn't use your absentee ballot, and you'll be able to vote as usual. Your vote truly counts up and down the ballot. Our chair, Alicia Andrews, has said repeatedly, use your ballot and vote from the bottom up, because it is our local folks who impact our lives the most day in and day out. That being said, I know that all of us are focused very much on the presidential election, as well we should be. If we're not scared, or at least concerned, then it's time to be so and to make every effort to get the last one of our family and friends out to vote and to vote the right way. Before I introduce our guest, I want to just mention that tomorrow evening we are having a live watch party. It will be at One Oak Field in Tulsa, and the doors open at 6:15. The program starts at 6:30. We will be there literally all evening because there's a lot going on in Oklahoma, and we're excited to be coming together as Democrats. It will be a nice outdoor, socially distanced, safe event. We'll have concessions available, a cash bar, masks will be required, but it's just a time for us to come together as Democrats and share what we hope will be a truly remarkable, positive, historic evening for all of us. So that's tomorrow evening. I want to say this. Most people I know cannot travel right now because either you still don't have power or you have concerns about being on the road. I get that. But what we are doing is truly expanding this broadcast tomorrow night. It's a bit of a mashup between the Hamilton Report and Alicia's, our chair's, live daily updates on YouTube. That will begin promptly at 7 o'clock, and we will go until 11 o'clock. It will offer you a nice opportunity to break away from MSNBC or CNN, wherever you're planning to get your election night coverage from. I say a nice break because we will be paying attention to results as they come in. But our focus is going to be on candidates here in Oklahoma and party leaders from around the country. We'll be talking to them about what's going on in their states. And perhaps most important of all, we will be talking with plain folks, just Democrats like you and me, who live around the country, understanding what their hopes and their fears are, their concerns, and the things that they're looking forward to after the election. So it promises to be a very, very full evening. And however you're watching this broadcast, you can watch that one tomorrow evening at 7 o'clock, either from my Facebook page or the Oklahoma Democratic Party's Facebook page, which many of you are on right now, and also on our YouTube page, which is simply okdemocrats.org/YouTube. We will be there for 4 hours, and you don't have to feel like, oh, if you jump in that you won't be able to jump back out. Not true. But through the evening, do check in with us, because I think the guests that we have lined up for you will be both entertaining and educational, and if nothing else, give you a sense of camaraderie with Democrats from around the country. It's something that I need right now, and so I hope that you will join us. I want to now, I guess what you're getting tonight is actually a double dose of Hamilton's in the Hamilton Report. Our guest this evening is a man that I met very, very shortly after coming back to Oklahoma after living in New York for many, many years. And the reason I was so anxious to meet him was because I knew of one progressive news outlet in the state, and that was his. He is the editor of the Oklahoma Observer, and I'm really happy to welcome my very special guest this evening, Arnold Hamilton. Need to say real quickly that while we are not related by blood, I wish we were, because he would definitely be my better looking, smarter brother. And I always like that. But in full transparency, I do need to let you know that I do have the pleasure of serving on the advisory board of the Oklahoma Observer. It's a great publication, and I hope that you will check it out. But first, Arnold, welcome to the Hamilton Report. I'm so glad you could be with us.
Thanks, Scott. It's great to be here. And boy, I don't know. I don't know if you can sense the nervous tension and anxiety that I have as we build toward tomorrow and the next couple of days, waiting for results to come in. But it's palpable around this Hamilton household.
Well, it is around mine as well. First, I really do appreciate you being here. I cannot think of a more challenging night for the editor of the state's only true progressive voice to spend some time with us when you could be spending your time doing lots of other things, but at least you're not crying in your pillow right now. You're spending some time with us. And I want to take advantage of your expertise, Arnold. You've been covering Oklahoma politics for a long time. You have made governors squirm. You have made elected officials turn around and walk the other way when they see you coming. But you've also been able to talk to people on both sides of the aisle to get a balanced approach to their thinking, and therefore that informs your reporting. So let's start with the obvious, and let's look at how you're feeling about the presidential election right now.
Well, if we're thinking in terms of Oklahoma only, then clearly Trump would be considered a prohibitive favorite to carry the state. But that doesn't tell the whole story, as far as I'm concerned, where Oklahoma is at this point. I really do think the pendulum is beginning to swing back in Oklahoma toward the middle, and the state is beginning to purple up, particularly the urban centers. And so tomorrow night, for example, I'm going to be looking very closely to see how well Joe Biden runs in Oklahoma County and in Tulsa County in particular. We might look at Cleveland County and Payne County and Comanche County as well. Nationally, Lord, I'm afraid to make a prediction, because everything points toward ending the 4-year nightmare that we have endured. But 4 years ago is still fresh. We've lived it for 4 long years now, and I'm just loath to make that prediction.
Yeah, and I wasn't really looking for a prediction so much as just what you're hearing from folks on the ground. I know that we have been really hopeful. People have been sharing with us that they're quite hopeful that Oklahoma County, Cleveland County, and there's a lot of optimism about Tulsa County this time around as well. I know that that's going to be a little tougher, but I am glad to hear people so optimistic.
Yeah, and obviously you don't know how much quite to read into all this, but the early voting and the absentee voting has just been off the charts. And we had 164,000 people vote early this time statewide. We had 264,000 people return their absentee ballots. And the numbers look really good in terms of Democrats returning their ballots. And the world in which we operate here in Oklahoma today, it seems to me that if you're registered as an independent, you're more likely to vote Democratic in the presidential race than you are for Trump. If you're willing to sort of set yourself apart and not be part of the Republican dominant team here in Oklahoma, then that suggests to me that you're open to voting the other way. So I would not be at all surprised if Joe Biden carries Oklahoma County in particular. And I think Tulsa may be a real surprise for us too. The numbers there suggest there are a lot of things at foot. And if he runs very well in Tulsa County, that is going to bode well for a lot of Democrats down ballot, I think.
I think that that's an important thing. We've been talking about that all along, about how important it is that we support people up and down the ballot. And I got some really terrific news today. The party, particularly under the leadership of the chair, has been really encouraging voter or participation with regard to voting by Democrats to become poll workers. And I learned today that Tulsa County has over 100 Democrats more than what they can use, people who volunteered to be poll workers. So I think that that's a great sign that people are excited about being really involved in politics, because as you pointed out, you said that the pendulum is starting to swing the other way, and it's, year after year when it seems like nothing you do matters, and now you're starting to see, not just my vote matters, but also my participation in the process. So I agree with you very much. I think that it will help down ballot folks.
And we live in a world where we expect to get almost everything instantaneously. We expect with broadband internet to be able to get online and to do what we need to do immediately, pronto. And we're not very patient as a society, I think. And you have to realize, I'm old enough and have been around Oklahoma long enough, and you grew up here, so you remember these days too, to remember when Democrats absolutely dominated this state. And it took Republicans 40, 50 years of constantly chipping away. And one election year, they'd get a slice of bread. And the next election year, they might get 3 slices of bread. And eventually they had half a loaf. And eventually they had basically the whole loaf, and they were in the dominant position that Democrats were in for an entire century. The good news on that, I think, if we can be patient here a little bit, is that things, I do think, change more rapidly in society today. So I don't think you will see any one party dominate for as long a period of time as Democrats did in the 20th century, for example. So I think the path back to at least an equal head-to-head matchup in this state is a lot closer than a lot of people think.
I would welcome that. I would absolutely welcome that. And that's exactly what we need right now, don't you think?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I think, too, I think you're seeing it as I go around neighborhoods in Oklahoma. I'm seeing more in areas that you would think of as sort of typically Republican, let's say North Oklahoma City, Edmond, and places like that. I'm seeing a lot more Democratic signs. I've seen a lot of Republicans for Biden signs, believe it or not. In these sorts of things for a long time, I sort of felt like Democrats were sort of down in the foxhole, and occasionally they might stick their head up briefly, but it was almost like they didn't want people to know what they were thinking and who they were supporting. And now it's much more out there. I think people are feeling more confident that, we've got the best message. We're inclusive. We want to make this a world where everybody, regardless of your race, your religion, your sexual preference, whatever it might be, has an equal shot at the American dream. And, that the old days of trying to take us back to the 1950s and Father knows best is just not going to work in the world today.
I found it was really a humorous moment to me when 45 was talking to people in Michigan, particularly suburban women, and was talking about how great it was that we are getting your husbands back to work.
Yeah.
That sounded positively 1940s talk. It was, I can't imagine a woman voting for him after having said that, but a lot of women voted for him after the crude things that he said and did the first time around. So I'm not counting on anything just yet, but I do believe that change is coming.
Yeah, no, I think so too. And I do think that we can't underestimate the number of and in many cases for religious reasons, the number of women in Oklahoma for whom that is that's a wonderful thing to hear. And so, I think the times are changing. I'm very hopeful that the younger generations are going to lead us to a much more favorable world. Sometimes I think we boomers have sort of fouled this thing up, and I'm counting on my kids' generation and the generation lower than that to help restore us to more of the promised land.
And I think that they would tend to agree with you that we have done our share of screwing things up. But I have been truly impressed and at times very humbled by the outpouring of volunteerism that I've seen among young people this election cycle. People who are not afraid to leave their computer and actually get out and go to a rally to get voters registered to vote, to advocate for early voting and absentee voting. It's been wonderful to see. And I think that momentum is, it's not going to be a one-off. I really think that we'll continue moving in that direction.
No, I think that's right. And I think we've taken things for granted in this country for way too long. And I can remember the Observer's founder, Frosty Troy, who I'm sure some of your viewers and those viewing tonight will remember well, used to say to me, and I always thought he was just a little melodramatic, but he would say, people don't think we can lose this country, but we can. And I think we've realized very quickly that we better get in the game and pay attention and roll up our sleeves and get after it.
Yes, I think that's a profound statement, and it's a reality, which is a great way to transition into looking at one of the most hotly contested congressional seats in the entire nation, and that's right here in central Oklahoma. Congresswoman Horn has fought a valiant fight in this campaign. Sticking with the issues, sticking with her accomplishments, and yet she has been slammed over and over and over by the negativity of the Bice campaign. What sense do you have about where this campaign will wind up after tomorrow night?
Well, again, this is one of those things where I think if you see Biden at close to 50% tomorrow night, I think Kendra Horn is in really good shape. If he's close to 50% in the fifth district, quite honestly, we knew all along that the first reelect for her would probably be the most difficult, particularly in a presidential election year. No Democrat has held that seat, as we know, since John Jarman changed parties back in 1974, and so we knew they were going to throw everything they could at this because they see this as a firewall, I think, for them. But she has worked this district tirelessly, and I think she fits the district well. She's progressive in many ways. She's got very moderate credentials as well. So she appeals to a very broad audience. That's why I thought some of her campaign ads, like the mayor of Jones, who said, I'm a Republican, but she got things done for us and I'm voting for her this time around, really resonated with folks out there. So I think, she's done everything that she could do. And if she can win this one, then I think that solidifies her position or that seat in Democratic hands for a long time. And I think that's why you see the Republicans pouring extraordinary amounts of money into this and slinging as much mud as possible to try to tear down what she's accomplished in 2 years.
Yeah, when Bice was caught in the plagiarism scandal last week, and it was blatant. You could not deny that it was a total ripoff. Her people pivoted and said, well, Republicans stand united. And so, of course, we have similar thoughts. Well, no, not when you just rip them off of someone else's website. So I've been really impressed that Congresswoman Horn, throughout her tenure, has been quite accessible to people that she represents. She and her staff have been true resources not just her as a representative of the people, but true resources for the people of Oklahoma in her district, because she does have a way of making things happen. And it doesn't matter if you voted for her or not, she's still working for you. And I love that approach.
Yeah, and I think too, we are aware that there are some Democrats who she has disappointed with some votes, and I've disagreed with her on some things, including the minimum wage. She argued that what fits for San Francisco doesn't fit for Oklahoma City, which I understand the argument, but I also would suggest that $15 an hour is really what's necessary in Oklahoma City. It's not enough in San Francisco, but it's really necessary here in Oklahoma City to try to make ends meet. But I take a broad view of these things, and I look at the big picture, and I think, with Kendra Horn as a Democrat, and even as a progressive, I call myself liberal Democrat, you're getting 90% of what you could hope for from her. We're not, none of us are going to agree on everything, but you're going to get 90%. If you go with Stephanie Bice, you're not going to get you're not going to get much of anything if you're a liberal political thinker in the 5th Congressional District.
Nope, you won't get much in terms of education or the ability to live a decent life, to have any sense of fairness. And I'm going to leave that one alone, because I could really get on a roll there. And
no, I know. Maybe I shouldn't have headed down that path, but
no, I'm the one who took you there.
Because I still think, there were people who sat out the presidential race 4 years ago, because they were angry over the way that the Clinton-Sanders race played out. And I just don't think that's worked out very well for folks who did that.
Well, and I have to say that I have tremendous respect for Bernie, because Senator Sanders
absolutely
has gone over and above what he had to for this campaign to make sure that Joe Biden is elected. He has promised to work with him in any capacity that Mr. Biden would like, and that's exciting to me. He has worked to galvanize his base. Mm-hmm. And in a very true sense, I think, demonstrating that the Democratic Party really is, even now, the big tent party, and that excites me.
Yes.
Let's go to the other side of the Capitol, and let's spend a moment talking about the Broyles Inhofe face-off. I will say that Abby Broyles was my guest a couple of weeks ago on this broadcast, and today is her 30th birthday. I wish I had a fraction of her smarts at that age. She is a very, very smart woman, great thinker, super with people, because she listens as much as she talks. And I find that so refreshing. And it's such a counter to what we've endured for so long from that seat. Yeah. How are you sensing? I'm sorry. Thank you, Amber, for correcting me. Today is her 31st birthday. So she could still easily be my daughter. And I would love to be that smart. But let's talk about the current senator who has no desire, he feels no need to explain himself, to debate, nothing. He just feels so ensconced, as if nothing can remove him from the Senate.
That's been one of the great puzzles for me over the years, is why Okies keep returning him to public office when he's always been one of the meanest, nastiest people that you could really ever run across, and somebody that you couldn't take what he said to the bank. This is a guy whose own family he engaged in lawsuits with. A guy who there were questions about him going AWOL when he was in the Army. He lied about when he graduated from college, and it's one thing after the other. But he's doing the bidding of a lot of the powers that be here in Oklahoma. Let's just be honest. He's going to vote reliably the way the oil and gas barons want him to, without regard really for the 99% of people here in Oklahoma. And unfortunately, uh, it's very hard to unseat somebody like him who wraps himself in the flag, and he really plays that. He was the one who coined the phrase that his agenda was God, guns, and gays, and he's parlayed that into a career, and then now he's the abominable snowball man, by being the climate denier that he is, and that sells with a lot of people in Oklahoma who just simply walk in and basically vote for anybody who has an R behind their name. But that said, if Abby can get this race into the range where she's in the mid 40s or above, that will tell you a lot about, I think, where Oklahoma's headed. And I kind of, there was one poll Amber Integrated had a month or so ago that had Inhofe at less than 50% approval. And, that tells me something. This guy's been in public office since 1967. And if you can't top 50%, that does suggest some unrest out there with people. So if she can do that and keep it close, much better than most people would have ever imagined when this race started, then I think she is uniquely positioned on down the line. I think she has all the qualities. You said it. I mean, just smart as a whip, one of the nicest, most genuine people you'd ever run across. And, full disclosure, I've known her mother for years. I've taught some classes over the years at Southern Nazarene where she's a professor and just absolutely adore her mom. I've told Abby I'm not at all surprised that she is the brilliant, accomplished person that she is because knowing her mom. But I kind of view her situation a little bit like Cindy Munson's situation here in Oklahoma. She ran against David Dank for the State House, and Dank was a pretty moderate Republican, frankly. He was a good guy. I've known him for years, and but people in his district liked him, and they really couldn't see any reason to toss him out. They really liked Cindy. She campaigned brilliantly in that race, but they couldn't see any reason to throw David out for his last term. But of course, all of a sudden he dies and there's a special election, and Cindy Munson is uniquely positioned then to run for that seat and wins and has been hanging on to that seat since then. And suddenly people who would only vote R in the past found that, oh, you know what, the water's fine if I vote for a D. The lightning isn't going to strike. So I think there's that potential there for Abby for a statewide race if this one doesn't work out. But hopefully she'll catch lightning in a bottle.
I'm hoping so.
Boy, that would turn the country on its ear, wouldn't it?
Sure would. Arnold, we exhausted our time together this evening, but we've got plenty more to talk about after the election, and I'm going to ask you to commit to coming back and seeing us after things settle a bit, and we'll take a close look at what happened and what's next. Okay.
Okay, that sounds like a winner. Sorry, I filibustered.
Are you kidding? We said last night when we chatted that we could both fill up 2.5 hours and wouldn't matter if we had an audience.
Exactly.
Thank you for joining us. We'll talk soon, my friend.
All right. Take care.
Bye-bye. Well, friends, we are just about out of time. I want to say thank you to Arnold for being with us. I hope that you will please visit the Oklahoma Observer. If you don't know it already, it's a fabulous, fabulous piece of journalism every single month. Do check it out at okobserver.org. Reminder that we will be with you all evening tomorrow evening right here, looking at what's going on in Oklahoma and around the country, doing it with a little lighter hand than you might find other places. So I hope that you will join us. Finally, there has been so much going on for so many people in these last few weeks. that I'm going to ask you to please, please take good care of yourself and those that you love, because it's easy for us to become so focused on one thing that we forget those things that will be with us long after the election. And that includes our health, our family, and our loved ones. So please do take care of yourselves. Know that I appreciate you being with us. And tomorrow night promises to be a great evening. And I hope that you will join us then. Until then, my friends, I thank you for joining us. I'm Scott J. Hamilton, and on behalf of all of us at the Oklahoma Democratic Party, thank you for being here. Let's keep a great, great positive attitude and be ready to celebrate. Good night.